Given us, yeah, can we go, Erica? Guys, we ready?
Okay. Go ahead.
All right, so my name's Bernie. Like everyone on this group, we home gardeners. We're looking for ways to be innovative, to use the technologies that are available to us. And this is where Bagashi is really great, because it's something that you can basically find a way to use with the equipment that you have already. It's quite possible then to take it into high levels, or just keep it very basic. So I thought nice place to start with Bagashi is to understand bacteria, because bacteria is the driving force that makes Bagashi work. If you look at our Earth, it's approximately 4.5 billion years old, and bacteria have been around for about 2 billion years. So they've had the planet to themselves almost half the lifespan of Earth. So bacteria has invented almost all the molecules that exist on Earth today. So they're the building blocks of life. All right. Sorry. All right. Okay. The first bacteria that came to Earth are our fermenters. These are the guys that we're going to be using in making Bagashi. We use fermenters all the time. They've got the characteristic of bubbling. So like a nickname would be calling them bubblers. We use them to make beer, wine, even cheese, kombucha, kimchi, and so forth, so on. How they operated is that they were able to eat the food that had already formed on Earth, which is your sugars and your acids. And these guys did really well. They covered the Earth. They went sky high. They were deep in the ocean. And they got to a point of crisis because they'd eaten all the food. So they had to come up with a plan. And the plan was to go to the next phase of bacteria, which is our photosynthesizing bacteria. This meant they were able to make their own food. They used the sunshine, the water, and the minerals that were available. That was all the food that was available. Create their food from the sunshine. And as we know, they had a byproduct called oxygen, which is poisonous to our fermenters, the bubblers, which forced the bubblers to move underground into the dark spaces that we now associate them to, like swampy areas and in the soil. They also became really, really good at eating food and go forth and procreating, and hit a crisis point themselves, which led to the final evolution of bacteria, which is what we call the breathers. We use the oxygen that these blue-greens made, because I mean, you think about photosynthesis, the plants are green, so they're characterized by a blue-green color. So what breathers do is they eat the molecules of other bacteria. So they would go and invade these bacteria, which meant that in their development, they created amazing technology, which today scientists still cannot level up. They have motors, they have drills, they can swim, they've got camshafts, and all those motor technical terms that I pretend I know what they mean, but okay. So very high tech. They work in liquid, so they swim around. And then they had a bit of a brainwave. They decided, well, instead of going to invade all the other bacteria, we're just going to bring on the blue-greens to make food, and we'll swim them to where there is sunlight, so we get food. They're part of our colony. And what eventually happened is that these cells started to come together in cooperation. So we've gone from a system of competition to one of cooperation. So the cells, all these different bacteria, started to give up parts of their DNA, parts of their intelligence, into what we now have as a nucleated cell. And we are all nucleated cells. We all have little cells that got mitochondria, and they're all actually individual units, but they work together. These cells are pretty amazing. They cover everything. And you'll find that these cells are, or these bacteria, are very specific. So you'll find those that are adapted to the ocean, those that are adapted to your human body, those adapted to the soil. So they're area specific, they're quite specialized. So yeah, so interesting point. As humans, we have 10 of these bacteria to our 1 cell. And it's kind of a mind bender, except for the fact that they're really tiny, so they're not heavy, which is why we look like us and not some alien shark. All right, so that's a little bit of background on bacteria. All right. Don't you love mind maps? It keeps us on track. Yeah, you know. All right, okay. So then we get to Bagashi. So who's worked with Bokashi before? You know it, okay, so, and it's an interesting word that's come up because it's an option for composting. What makes it remarkable is it allows you to compost food that would not otherwise be able to go into your composting system. It works a little bit differently to regular compost because regular composting systems break down your organic matter. Bokashi stands for fermented organic matter, loosely translated. So it pickles the food. And in the pickling, it gets it into a state that when you add it to your further composting systems, it allows it to break down easily. So you get a compost bin full, your Bagashi compost bin full, leave it a week to pickle, and then you add it to your worm bin, or you add it to your soil, and 4 to 6 weeks later, it's basically all gone. So it's a fast method. All right. So Bagashi is an anaerobic process. So getting oxygen out the system when we do the process. It allows you to compost, as I said, things you can't put in normally. Your poop, cats and dog poop, your poop, oils, meat, bones that you would cut down a bit smaller, bread, citrus, garlic, onion, all those kind of things. So you can literally put anything into Bagashi except for cardboard and paper, rotten food. You don't want that. You must obviously keep away from sunlight and heat because they've acclimatized to being underground. All right. So what Bagashi does, it brings organic matter back into the soil. Organic matter is your carbon, which when you look at what carbon does to the soil, it allows life to thrive. It allows the creatures in the soil to be able to grow and build because they've got material to grow from. So it increases the life of soil, which in turn means that you can increase your water holding capacity in soil. Fun fact is that empty soil, so just your silicon sand, can hold a ratio of 1 sand molecule to 1 water molecule. But if you increase the carbon, it can go up to 4 water molecules to that 1 sand molecule. And because it's a carbon structure, it's a sponge. It holds the water. Without the carbon in the soil, the water drains away. So it's a nice way to increase your water capacity. And then what's really remarkable about Bagashi, it's got a lot of healing potential for our environments. It's been used to heal waterways. So there's, you make these Bagashi bioballs with some clay and Bagashi and sand, and you would pop it into the water at I think it's like 1 bioball per meter squared, something like that. And it helps to remediate the polluted waterways. For our soils that have been degraded and damaged, you can use Bagashi as well to help deal with the glycosulfate, GMOs, that stuff. So there's a rate that you would apply to, like the amount of poison you've put on would then require X amount of Bagashi to be added. So that's actually a good news for me, to think that there is this option. Yeah, so Bagashi works with microbes. So we've spoken about the bacteria. So microbes are your fungi, it's your bacteria. it's your yeast that you would cultivate onto a carbon base. So your carbon, we're going to be using sawdust today, but you can use rice bran, wheat bran, beer. When they make the beer and you've got those leftover beer husks, what's it called? Oh, hops husks. You can, so carbon based, because there's nutrition in the carbon with the cellulose, and that's what the microbes would then pollinate. With microbes, their main job is to decompose organic matter, which is how we get our goods back into the soil. And when it's decomposed into the soil, it releases what those compounds are. So now you've got your amino acids and proteins and all these type of things coming back into being able to absorb to the body. So for us as people, our gut system has also got microbes. They digest our food for us, and we feed them as a hey, you have something for me, there's something for you. Plants do exactly the same, which is why if you're going to be using Bokashi in your soil, always make sure there's a plant with roots so that they can pollinate around the roots. So the plants give sugars, and then the Bokashi has broken down the organic matter that the plant can absorb. With us, we even get our hormones, serotonin, dopamine, and some other goods which I don't remember. But it's important then for our own physical and mental health as well, to have a healthy microbial system. Okay. Yeah. All right. So there's two main ways we can harvest our bacteria. The first is the easiest, because everybody usually has these ingredients. Be water, just clean water and by clean water, rainwater, spring water, or if you use tap water, dechlorinated. That means in an open container, leave the water to gas off for 24 hours so the chlorine leaves the water. You use rice, so a cup of rice, you would add to the water, shake it around or put it in a bowl and mix it around so you get that cloudy water. When the water's cloudy, that's what you want, and you want that starchiness in the water, because that's what your bacteria are going to feed on. You would tap off that water into a container. Why the container is important, that it's got a wide enough top, because what you're needing is the bacteria that's in the air to fall down into the water. So if you've got a small little space, it's going to have a lot longer before there's more bacteria. So put this rice wash water into your jar, and you use a serviette, a tissue, or like a matching cloth, so cover, and a hairband or something just to secure that other bugs don't get into this rice wash. And put this jar on top of a cupboard or the fridge for about a week. What you'll see happen is little sediments of the sediments forming. So these floating on the top and some at the bottom. And then you'll know, okay, it's 5 days, 7 days. Remember, temperatures plays a factor. Cold weather, it takes longer. Warm weather, it's very quick. You would now have your rice water. So step 2 is to get this water without the sediment. So carefully pour off the water so that you can have this rice wash, rice water. And then step 2 would be using 1 part of this rice water to 10 parts milk. Full cream milk is best because it's the sugars in the milk that you want these bacteria to eat up and give you your lactic acid bacteria serum. Again, in the jar, covered with a serviette, so that it can breathe out of the sunlight, on top of the fridge, on top of a cupboard. And you'll know it's ready when you've got curds and whey. So curds is the cheesy bit that forms on the top of the jar, and the whey is this liquid serum, kind of yellowish in color, and that's the good stuff that we want. Okay, all right. So the trick is to get the curds out. All right, so the curds are not wasted. if you make cheese, this is your first step in process to make cheese. So you can do something with that curds for yourself. You can feed it to your chickens. You can feed it to the dogs. You can put it into a compost system. So the curds is not going to go to waste. The whey, which is your liquid that has all the bacteria, the lactic acid bacteria, is what we want to use for the Bagashi making. The product as it is, the raw product can last 5 days, 7 days. You can put it in the fridge to make it last longer, or you add molasses and make a nice brown mixture, and it can last for a year in the fridge. Yeah. All right, so that's the one way of collecting bacteria. The other way is called Indigenous Microbial Organisms, IMOs. It's indigenous because it comes from the local area. Why this is great is because your local area bacteria is already the dominating bacteria of that space. It's adapted to your environment, so it's strong. You want to find a place that the soil is undisturbed. So if you've got a forest area, perfect. If you've got access to a grassy, something like bamboo, also excellent, because all grasses send out a lot of sugar at their roots. So you'll have lots of bacteria around the roots, which is what you want to get the bacteria in the soil. Good way to look for a good spot is nice healthy tree. If you look around in the leaf litter, see if you can see mycelium activity, which is those little white threads, and earthworm castings, then you know you're on a good spot. Basic way is cooking rice, but any starch form. So you can use potato, piece of bread, that kind of vibe, because you're giving the bacteria a food source. Just like with the milk, you gave it a food source. Yeah, you're giving rice as a food source. It would be in a box that they're able to access, but you also prevent other critters like mice and so forth being able to get into. I'm not going to go too much into that, but bottom line is you're getting the mycelium and the bacteria to move into the rice, and then you would process that rice into a form that it's also liquid. I'll make notes. I've never done it, so I'm no expert, and I'm going to do it because I found out you can even use your worm bin. So you make the rice inside the container and you put it in your worm bin, because your worm bin has lots of bacteria, so you can use that system as well. So there's many ways to get this together. All right. Then, yeah, if ever you have a bad Bokashi experience, you just add it to the compost, okay? And you start again. Then we look at our Bokashi bin, right? So Bagashi bin, it can be as simple or as complicated as you want it. It's literally a container that allows you to layer your food, where, like a worm bin, it's got holes at the bottom that the extra liquid that would come from the food decomposing or fermenting down and drain into, and you fill your bin, etc. So if I look at a bucket, see, yeah. If I look at a bucket, you would use 2 buckets. One is your container. If you want to be fancy, you put a tap at the bottom. So when you've got liquid, you open the tap and you pour it out, or you just lift out the inside bucket, empty it out. Either way. So you'd have your bottom bucket. The second bucket, drill all the holes at the bottom of the bucket so that it can drain out. You put one inside the other so that they stand with a gap. You can put a brick in the bottom of the bucket so that it makes a natural platform. And then you can start Bokashi composting. Basically, outside bucket, brick, inside bucket with all the holes. The bottom, you want maybe a material, because then it will allow the liquid to go through, but it helps to create an anaerobic environment, and also stop solid waste falling into the bottom bucket and clogging up the system. You start off with 1 layer of Bokashi, so a handful, a cupful on the base, and then you literally build up. a centimeter of food waste, and then a handful of Bokashi, and you go through that. You can't have too much Bokashi, but you know what, if you're going to be buying it at, I think I checked, it was 250 Rand for 2 kilos. Whereas you can make it for dirt cheap, it's just the process and it takes time. You know, then it's great. Yeah. Okay. With your food that you put into your bucket, remember it's anaerobic, so you don't want air. So when you've added a layer of food and you've added your layer of Bokashi, take a potato masher or something and just squash down to get any air pockets out. Since you're only going to be using one bucket lid, what you could even do is cut out the inside of the bucket, and then you use that to put it on top of the food. So you create so you've got your inside bucket with all the layers of food. You squish down all the food to get the air out. Cut the inside out with just any type of, you can use a piece of wax paper, cardboard even, but you're wanting to make an inner lid to go on top of the food so that you're capping off the inside of the food, so it doesn't have air interaction. When the bucket's full, you put it aside for 1 week to pickle, and then you do your secondary process, which is add it to your worm bin. Please don't scare the worms. Add one side because they need to get used to this new food. They might not like it initially, but they will, once it processes further, consume it very quickly. Or you dig it into your garden, so about a spade's depth, you know, so that it's got 20, 30 centimeters into the ground. Cover with your soil, and about 2 weeks later, you can plant on top of it. And that's Bagashi. All right. So now we're going to make some. All right. Any questions? You can compost it in there. Yeah.
I can compost it. I cannot put it with my.
You can, yeah. Yeah, okay, so the question is about using poo and how to compost it. So poo is usually like feces of any personality. With people and dogs and cats, because we have a processed diet, food comes from a factory, it's not the same as a horse that's eating the grass. It probably got pathogens. So it's a good question, how to compost it. So Bokashi you can use to break down that feces as such. If you're worried, then you would just use the compost in a non-food area of your garden. So you're still getting all the nutrients, and it's been cleaned through the Bokashi process. But if you are worried, then rather use it in a non-food part of the garden, because normally if you are composting, if you're using a human ear toilet as an example, typical bucket system, if it's just sawdust, it literally needs to pickle for 1 to 2 years. So this does drastically reduce the need to keep aside. If you, what you could even do is do your Bagashi, let it pickle, and then put it through an earthworm system, because earthworms have a great ability to turn pathogens into like nothing much. They clean the soil. They've got a, yeah. Yeah, they kind of sort it out. Okay. Yeah. I don't understand why not cardboard, because you can use newspaper to make Bokashi, but cardboard doesn't work. I have no clue why. I've not been able to find out. It just, yeah, maybe that's why you can even use it as a top. Maybe it just doesn't decompose. Something in the process of manufacturing cardboard does something. Yeah. So that's using cardboard, yeah? You could. It's just so that it makes a little contact, so that the Bokashi bin inside has as little contact with air, because there will be air as you're building the bin up. Yeah. So Yeah, you can definitely, or you just push down and tuck in neatly. Yeah. Okay, I just want to check if there's any questions. Okay, I've not got any questions, so we're going to assume all is good. Okay. So, in Ecoloo, we're using sawdust. All you would do is you can turn that sawdust. We've got sawdust that we're going to use. Turn that into Bagashi. So it smells better. Some people don't like the smell of Bagashi. It's got a slightly sour smell. And because it's got the bacteria in there, it's going to break down all the contents so much faster, which means then you don't have to store so long and take such a lot of care to process through. Yeah. Just I know friends, they're using Ecoloo with the Bokashi system. They let it pickle and then they put it through the earthworm bin after 3 months, and then 6 months later they use that earthworm cast in their garden. So it's a lot faster. It's a lot faster. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so out of sunlight, out of hot areas, because it needs to be cool and dark, like me on a Saturday night. Excuse me. Okay, all right, so our ingredients. I've got the serum that I made over here. I'll pass around so you can smell it. If anyone wants to disinfect in whatever process or spitter. You don't normally have cling wrap over the top, but we travel in the car, so I've got a habit of things falling and spilling everywhere. So, okay. It's got a slightly sour smell. You'll smell the molasses. If you want to pass around. Okay. Another thing you could do is just go to the shop and you buy a mixture that's got effective microorganisms and fungi inside already. The advantage of the shop bought version is that you know exactly what you're getting inside. Like this one says 29 strains of bacteria, etc., etc. So it's a way of buying a ready-made product. So this would be your bacteria source, or the lactic acid bacteria, or the IMOs that you would make is your bacteria source. This is 72 Rand because I was going to make more lactic acid labs, but life happened and I didn't. So went and bought. Okay, so you've got your bacteria source. The other thing that you require is molasses, water, and sawdust, and that's it. Right, so we're ready to make some Bokashi. Okay. Which one? This one. This is your labs. Lactic acid bacteria serum, LABS. Here's a picture of the Here's a picture of what the bin looks like. Here. So because we're making a 25 liter bucket, the recipe is going to call for a cup. So it's 250 mils of your effective microorganism concentrate or your labs. You need 20 liters of sawdust. So if you've got a yogurt tub of 1 liter, it's 20 tubs of yogurt of sawdust. And then 500 mils molasses. All right. So you would mix the liquids together. Water, 5 to 7 liters of water. So you'd mix your liquids together and then add it to the sawdust. Your ultimate goal is to have sawdust that is damp, mustn't be wet. If you squeeze it and water comes out, it's too wet. So it's better to rather add water to it. If you can squeeze it and it holds its shape, and then you can like flick through and it breaks off, then you know you've got the right mixture. Okay, so gonna be, maybe you can film the process of making Bagashi for us. Right, so sawdust is over there. Who would like to make Bagashi? So here's 2 containers for our mixing. This container is 2 liters minus a finger's depth. So we need 10 of these filled with sawdust. You can keep it on the table. Then put it on the table.
It also helps us to store something.
10 of these. Spread between. Yeah. Actually, you know what? Oh wait, yeah, no. You can just let it out. This is 1 portion. So 10.
Sorry, can I ask you, where do you buy the molasses from?
I went to Agri-Mart, but I didn't. I sent a friend. If you buy,
They're expensive.
no, but this is it. If you buy one of these, this was the cheap. Well, the cheap size was 30 rand for the food black molasses, but you can pay 40, 50, 60 rand.
Yeah.
I bought 25 liters for 180 rand.
But that's from Agri-Mart. Because that's what I wanted to know is where's the cheap molasses? I know it's somewhere.
This is decanted, so this is your cheap molasses. And it's, yeah, I mean, look, over time your molasses kind of degrades because the sugars get used up or something. But it's a sugar, so it's a preservative measure. So you buy your pre-made version, and then you can continue to extend it. So you use clean water to top up, and then you add molasses, which will then feed the bacteria inside, which means you can buy once and keep using because you keep growing it by adding the sugar, which is your food source, so that the microbes can continue living. Right. Yeah. It's an easy way to just like,
Okay, so that's bypass.
yeah, but this is easy because it's actually quite fun. Because literally you're going to use the rice to make a meal, so you can just use the water to wash the rice off. Get that milky rice water, keep it on top with like a serviette over a tissue and an elastic band because the microbes are small enough to fall through. Right? Having a little battle inside my internals. Okay. So the microbes are small enough to fall through into the water. They'll start eating the sugars of the rice sugars, the starch. Takes 5 days plus minus depending on the year of time. And then you would you would take that water and pour it out so you don't have any sediments left over. It's just the clean rice water. No funny floaties, because it looks like little curds, floaties. You don't want that. So you can pour it through a fine mesh so that you just get the water. And then you'd use 1 part rice water or even to 10 parts milk or even 5 parts milk or whatever you fit into the container. Again, the cover of the tissue is secured so the bugs don't get in. And you'll see the top will become this cheesy thick layer. And then the bottom is a yellowy liquid, like thick liquid that don't smell so great. And that is what is in here. I've just added molasses.
And then what's the rate of molasses?
You know what? If you're gonna keep it in your fridge for up to a year, you can go 50-50. Yeah, if you don't need so much, you can just go bloop, put a dollop
Does the
in.
molasses not kill
It's a sugar and it kind of stabilizes the and
okay.
putting it in the fridge because it's a low temperature, it means it's
okay.
stacked.
Okay.
There's our soda container. So water behind us. That's 5 liters. In a bucket.
And you can confirm the videos filming the thing.
I think maybe you must come that way because there's
Yeah.
glare on. I used the butter because I'd used this bucket for water and I hadn't washed it out, so I was worried there might be bacteria that cause infection, like make the mold. So I used the vodka to clean out and kill any bacteria because I was worried. This stuff I've had vodka for a long time. I've used it to make tinctures. I used it to make my spritzes. Anyone wants to have it? It just keeps fresh. Yeah, which is good. Thank you. Okay.
Marcela,
Yeah.
can you move closer to Bernie, please, because we can't hear her.
Okay, hold on.
And then any questions that Bernie gets, if she can please repeat the question because we can't hear the person asking the question.
Thank you for the questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
All right. So I've got one question. Okay. What if it smells really bad? And what are common mistakes or issues and how to correct them? If it bums out and it smells rotten and it's got black mold, or like if you have your milk and lactic acid combination happening and you get your curds, but it's got black mold on top, get rid of it. It's no good. It's going to destroy your Bokashi. Black mold, like with kombucha, you got it, get rid of it, add it to the compost pile. The compost pile takes all mistakes. So it'll ideally have always a sour smell. If it's got a kind of sour smell, then it's fine. When we make our bran and we pickled the bucket, you will see after the 4 weeks of pickling, it might have a little bit of white going through it. That's fine. It's perfect. But if it's black, get rid of it and start again. Okay. All right. So we've got 20 liters of sawdust over here. This is 5 liters of water, which we're going to put in the bucket. And we want in a cup's worth of effective microorganisms. So let's use our labs. This is 500 mils, so this is a guesstimate 250. I'm not a scientist in particular. I'm a bit of a round corner. All right. That in there. Put that back there. All right. So this is our molasses, which is 500 mils. Okay. Always add a little more if you want. And water. Anyone want a facial? It's really good for your skin. And we just mix it in. You can use warmer water because then it will dissolve the sugar easier. All right. I broke them. Oh, there we go. All right, who wants to mix sawdust? So we add and then you mix it through. Yeah, anyone else want to do mixing? You want to do it? Yeah. everything saturated. You don't want any dry sawdust. Work it through. You keep. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, the molasses is great. It's not food grade molasses. I tested it yesterday. Okay. Yeah. Although it's actually made for animal feed, so I saw the instructions next to food. You know, yeah.
So where do you buy that molasses?
This was at Guerrero. The big container, I just poured some out.
They make rum from it as well.
Do they make rum from molasses?
Yeah, because it's cheap. So it's the cheapest source of sugar.
Oh,
That's
wow.
that's why rum was invented. It was,
Yeah.
especially in the Caribbean, they had all this molasses left over from the sugarcane industry.
Oh.
And then they figured, we can make cheap booze from this. And then the rum industry sprung up.
And the world has changed. As a sugar source, you can also use brown sugar. So when you're working with your IMOs, your indigenous microbial bacteria, once you've got your rice that's been pollinated, you would do a secondary process. So that would be putting your rice to a portion of a jar and then adding first off molasses so that it beats sugars and gets into that, and then you put some more molasses a couple of days later and makes the liquid. But to stabilize it, you would use brown sugar. So yeah, I'm not an expert. Don't know too much. It's not holding together, so we know we need more liquid. How's yours looking? Almost there. Okay, so because it's an anaerobic process, right now there's a lot of air inside the sawdust. When we pack it into our container, whatever container you want to use, as long as it's clean, you push it down. I think pushing down, you push down more. Okay, you really push down. So it's good for muscle building, I guess. Yeah, and then pull it right to the brim of your container so that there is no airspace, and then seal it tight. Put it to a side for 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks. And what I like to do is halfway through just turn the bucket upside down, because gravity is gravity, liquid goes down. You don't have to, I just do. And then at the end of 4 weeks, you'd open up your bucket, make sure it's all slightly fermented, slightly sour, no funny black mold. And then you would do your secondary process, which is dry out Bokashi. You could use it straight away, but then you need to use it in a month. Dry it out, use it and store it for up to a year. Drying out, that's or a level area, and you air dry it out of the sun, and make no sun. Days of old they use sun, but they realize it wasn't a great idea. So in a shaded area or a well ventilated area, you get the bran to dry out, and then you package it airtight, and that can last for a year. And then you use it in your bin. You can use it in your compost toilet. Yeah, and wherever you feel need, garden, make Bibles. No, it can be used fresh. Like now, if you've fermented it for the month, so that the bacteria are making a home. What you're doing now with sawdust is you're giving a home for the bacteria to live on. All right. So if you've done the month of ferment, Pickling, thank you. You've done your month of pickling. You can use that material straight away, but it only lasts for about a month. It's the same as if you don't add molasses to your labs, it can be used straight away and last maybe 5 days. Otherwise, it's going to die because now it's got no more food source. All right.
Sorry. What color is it supposed to look like when it's after it's stayed for a month? Is it?
This is the thing about the coloring. It actually looks when you work with Bagashi, it looks like nothing has changed. So the sawdust will look the same when you take it out. It might have a little bit of mycelium, the white white fruit. When you're pickling your food, so you've got the Bokashi bin, it looks like nothing's happened. But what's happened is that the bacteria have moved into the food and pickled the food. So it's able to break down so much faster if you put it into the soil. If you find that you've got like orange peel takes quite a while, you can put that through a secondary Bokashi fermentation process. And then it sorts it out quick, or just trust nature to sort it out. Yeah. Are we looking? No. Okay. Almost not almost.
Ryan, where did you get the sawdust from?
Was a shop. They use it for the stables, and there's one down the road from me. So that big bag of sawdust was 110 rand. If you think it's 110 rand, 74 rand, and this is probably cost wise. What's 5 liters out of 25? That's 1/5 of 180. 30 rand. So you could, for the price of a small 2 kilogram, make a lot of Bagashi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't even need that really. You can.
If you're gonna eat rice, you've already got what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, milk is pretty easy to get. All right. Good. Okay. Yeah. So now, what we're gonna do is start stuffing. Right. Who wants to push? No, you can. Go. All right. Yeah, it's just a kind of big sawdust. So this, if I squeeze it, there's no liquid coming out. So it's wet, but it's not dripping. So then this is a good indication. It's wet, but it's not dripping. It would be obviously something like a rice grain would have quite a small husk, so it would be easier to stick together. Good. All right. So you need to push down a lot. And we do it layer for layer so that we get all those air pockets out. And all we're going to do is fill it right to the top and seal it, and then it's done. After that, you leave it 4 weeks to pickle. Take it out, dry it out, and then you can put it in your packaging or your bin to store and use as.
Since you need to push it so much, can you like vacuum pack that? Because it will compress it into a brick.
If you've got that capacity, that'd be great to vacuum pack.
Yeah,
because this is the part I don't like.
But I mean, even a vacuum cleaner on a as long as it's a thick plastic packet and it's airtight, a vacuum cleaner sucks things right down.
Could be, yeah. I mean, I've found this week that what you can do is newspaper, and you put your newspaper in your liquid, and then you put it into a Ziploc bag, and you get the air out, and then you put Bokashi on your make Bokashi out of newspaper. So that's also an easy method to make.
I almost feel like saying what's newspaper, because these days nobody uses it anymore.
What's quite interesting with Bokashi is you can potenize it, meaning you can make it stronger. You can add things like rock dust, salt, guana, anything else. Sweet. Yeah, so you can add extra goodness,
Nutrients.
yeah, nutrients to the Bagashi. This is a very basic works. It's like the slice of bread with a bit of butter. You can add your extra bits onto it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. You want to show what it looks like inside?
Oh, wow.
You squish it right down. No, you want as all the air out. When you get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Manual, but we really need to make sure it's as tight as possible. The cutout that's right where it's the Bokashi bin, we have a double bin, because then you can push it down. You use your potato mash to pocket the air out, and then you use your whatever cover to push down, and you've got it sealed. Does anyone else want to push? Yeah. Okay, so we got a question. Can I go through creating labs and IMOs again? Okay, so labs is lactic acid bacteria. Lactic acid because lactic acid is what's in the milk. And we're using the milk to feed the bacteria. We get it from the air. These bacteria are all around us. So we're getting these bacteria from the air. We create an environment for them to move into, which is where we do our rice wash first. Wash the rice so that you get that starchy water. It's that starchy water which has the food that your first round is going to work with. Put that starchy water inside your jar. A nice space for a lid, opening. Cover it with your tissue or a material so that the bacteria will be able to fall into the water and eat the sugars that are on the rice wash water. Use a hairband just to make sure that the tissue is tight on and that it's not going to fly off or the flies are going to get in and so forth. And it takes about a week, you'll see. There'll be floaty white sediment on top and sediments on the bottom. And that's kind of an indication that the rice wash is ready. Pour off this water to get the sediments out. So you can strain it or you just pour very carefully. And then you go for round 2, which is where you add the milk. The rice ratio of rice water is 1 part rice water, 10 parts milk. Full cream milk, because skim milk means you're going to have skinny bacteria. You want full-bodied bacteria. So the bacteria will eat the lactic acid inside of the milk. The milk, that's your sugars in your milk. And it will separate into curds and whey. Curds is like this thick cheese layer. It sits on the top. It's the floaty bit. And you can, the whey is a thick liquid. It's kind of yellowish in color. It smells like serious milk that's had a story. And you need to get the liquid part out without any whey. You don't want any whey. No, curds. You don't want any curds in the whey. So, you don't want any curds in the whey. All right, so you pour off your liquid, which is your whey. And that is the base where all the bacteria are in, which will then be the bacteria that we will cultivate onto sawdust. You can use it immediately like that, or you can stabilize it by adding molasses to it. Molasses is just a sugar, so it's got something to eat. These are living creatures, we need to feed them. You can use it immediately, or you can put it in the fridge with a dollop of molasses, and it can last up to a year in the fridge, 6 months to a year, depending on how much molasses you put in. You can use up to a ratio of 50-50 molasses and labs and keep it in the fridge. Put your label on with the date. and then you know what you're dealing with. Your IMOs, Indigenous Microbial Bacteria, that is where you are harvesting the bacteria that's already in your local environment. So you want to go to a place where the bacterial activity is good. So there's two kind of spaces. You've got one where there's high bacteria amounts, so your grass type plants, your bamboos. And then you've got the other side where you're going to get mycelium networks, that's your fungi, your mushroom network. That would be more in your forest area. So those are the bacteria, the microorganisms you harvest. The way you would do that is you'd have a container. It needs to have an opening. So one way would be to have a cardboard box with some holes in, so that the bacteria and mycelium can move into the box and pollinate the rice that you've put inside there as its food source. But you also need to protect it from rain. So you put a cover over the box so that mycelium and everything can go in through the sides, but the water's not going to come in should it rain. You bury it into a space where there is good bacteria source. So in a forest where healthy ecosystems happening, you'll see there's earthworms, you'll see the white mycelium moving through the ground. So then you know it's healthy soil and it's got a healthy bacteria colony. And you leave that 5 to 10 days. Weather also playing a part. If it's hot, it will be quick. If it's cold, it will be slow, because these bacteria work metabolism according to the temperature. If it's hot, they move quickly. If it's slow, they move slowly. Yeah, and then you would harvest this IMOs, take back home, and then process the rice. So one way to process it is to have rice, molasses, and then you allow the sugars in the molasses to feed the microbes in the rice. And then I believe you put some more molasses. I'm not too, as I say, I'm not an expert on this. It's more theory at this point. Sort of do it. Yeah. Another way, you can use a plastic container. Put your rice, like 1/3 of rice, in here, and then you've got an open space. You can use a piece of cloth as a protection, and then you can put something on top so that mice can't get in. So like a weight of some sort of grill or something. And then you put that into the soil, or you put it into your worm box so that you can again harvest onto the rice. Sorry, a point about this rice is it's a dry cooked rice. What that means is when you cook your rice yeah, no, we're filling it to the brim.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm going mad, man. When you cook rice, to harvest your IMOs, you want it as a hard rice. So let's say your recipe says 1 cup of rice and you cook with 2 cups of water. You would then go 1 cup of rice and 1.5 cups of water, so that it dry cooks. It's a hard rice. I don't know why, but that's the method. They use this with Korean natural farming, and then you will see things like IMO 1, IMO 2. It's 3, 4, and 5. All that means is what stage are you in. So IMO 1 would be you harvesting this microbial collection from the forest. IMO 2 is you processing it. IMO 3 is you creating your, and so forth and so on. Yeah. Okay. I think that's covers it. Okay. The stabilizing is sugar. All the sugar does is it feeds and it gives a food source so that your bacteria don't die from starvation. Putting it in the fridge, it's like being in winter. It slows the metabolic processes down, so they're not as active. Yeah, I also read or heard one way that this guy harvests is he'll get his rice and he puts his cover on, and then he puts some leaf mold, leaf litter that he got from the forest floor, with the understanding that there's bacteria on the leaf, and then he allows that easy process at home to make this bacteria. if you are going to go into the forest, take a marker. Because if you come back a week or 10 days later, you're going to say, well, which patch was my patch? So take a marker if you're going to bury rice that you can find it. Otherwise, you're going to dig up a whole lot of ground and the tree's not going to like it. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Any other questions? Yeah.
Outside.
Out of sun. So in a ventilated space so that the air can dry the Bokashi bran. And when it's totally dry, you can put it in a bucket, you can put it in a seal type. You remember sunlight is going to destroy it.
In your garage,
Yeah, garage is
Because-
perfect.
even though it will get something.
Yeah, it doesn't want too much. It doesn't like so cool and dark. Yeah,
Just the machine to apply this as well.
probably if you want to. Be careful not to have it fly around the air. Yeah, you need to use air because if you use heat,
For those,
you're
if you
going
want to
to,
cook it
yeah, so
commercially.
maybe in a room, if you want to do it in a room, then you lay it out flat and you just have a fan that's got air circulating, but not onto it, so it doesn't blow it everywhere. You put it on a top, yeah. Perfect. If you smell it, it's got that slight smell. It's a sour pickled smell. It's amazing. I like
But
your brand.
it still has to be dried, or is it fine to be used now? Because I did it a month ago.
If it's dried, it's dried. If it's not, it's not. No. That's awesome. So just show the difference. Show the difference in the size of the, yeah, so you see this is very fine husk. Yeah, it's a brand. So it's just quite nice. It's just a case of what do you have access to? You could use leaf mold to make this.
Sourness.
You know, because it's a carbon that you're making as a house for the bacteria. I just use sawdust because it's accessible and easy to get for me. If I didn't live where I lived, I would look at maybe newspaper. Yeah, or
Use brand. And then this
no, not the bleach paper, newspaper. So newspaper, not the one with the plastic glossiness. It must be newspaper that you would feed to earthworms. Yeah.
Not that different
the-
paper. Not that.
No
No,
glossies.
no, but I'm talking about, printed paper, like the shade that.
It's been bleached.
Oh, okay.
So I wouldn't trust it. No. Yeah, that you can use in a worm bin. You know, to a degree, you can add that to a worm bin. They'll decompose it up. Takes a while, eh? That's why you have a workshop. Get other people to do it for you. Does anybody want to make their own and take home? Did anyone bring a container? Yes. Okay.
Make a meeting.
No, exactly. Exactly. So get some sawdust into
So you
there,
can make
and
me
we've got enough liquid here.
Should we wrap it?
Okay, so that's Bakashi. I will create a little workbook for everyone. Carbon is house for bacteria, what you have brand. Okay, yes. Okay, so I think that's basically covers it. We're going to continue over here building our buckets, which might be boring for everyone to watch. So thank you for joining. Hope you learned something, and yeah, be well. Any questions, pop them on. Get to them.
Erica, any final words, or can we close the Zoom?
Just give me a minute to see if there's anybody that's got any questions.
You start using from there. You start switching from here. We'll just make it.
Okay.
Yeah, switching from there. You'll just have to be responsible for making the next round.
See how good he listens.
That's when you go
but to the brim, but we pull to the
all
brim.
the way to the top.
Yeah. So can I?
But
Yeah.
you don't dry this like this.
No,
What are you
what's
gonna do?
happen?
Erica, I'm gonna close this because my phone is dying.
Okay, we're gonna.
I hope
Okay,
that's okay.
thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Bernie.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me and offering the opportunity. It's quite fun, more than I expected. I wasn't as nervous as I thought I would be. So that's good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so this needs to be pulled to the brim.
So you fill this to the brim so that you have no air, and then put your lid on and you put it to pickle for a month.
Oh,
Thickening